Hello, welcome back. Today I have a book that I am ridiculously excited to share, and I'll flip the camera and we'll take a look at it together. But it is a first edition, second printing of the Pictorial Key to the Tarot. So, William Ryder and Son Limited put out this at the same time that they put out their Pam decks, the Roses and Lilies, Pam A. Really, those are the only two, I believe, that were out at this point, because the book was originally published in 1910. This is the first edition, second printing from 1922. And then there are two more editions that look like this. They've got this like orangey brown paper and golden embossed letters. So this is the first edition, second printing. I had to learn what that meant because I would have thought it was just a second edition, but nothing changed about the book between 1910 and 1922. They just reprinted it. So the one that came out after this would be the second edition because it might have changed a little, or, I mean, for sure the company changed. It went from William Ryder and Son Limited to Ryder and Company, I believe. So this book is from 1922. It is obviously not like, I mean, it's delicate. I'll just say that. It is delicate. But I have to be honest, it is a beautiful book. I mean, even in its sort of like slightly, I mean, obviously used, I'm very excited to have it. So essentially this book came out, and then there was a much smaller version that was just called The Key to the Tarot that came with the decks. It was a little navy blue hardbound book, significantly smaller. It was the size of the deck, essentially. So I think that would make it like 2.5 by 4-ish, 4 3/4 or something like that is a standard card size. That's how big that particular book was. At the same time that all came out, A.E. Waite and Ryder and Company printed this, which has the black line art, the Pictorial Key to the Tarot. This has been reprinted, copied, published tons and tons and tons and tons of times. But this is the original one. And I figured as long as I had it and loved it, I might as well share it so that everyone else in the world can see it and appreciate it. And yeah, so I'll flip the camera and we'll take a look at it and see what we think. All right, so here we have the 1922 Pictorial Key to the Tarot by Arthur Edward Waite. And this is the original edition put out by William Ryder and Son Limited of London in 1922. It is the first edition, second printing of this deck. The first printing of this edition was in 1910. So this one in particular was distributed by Samuel Weiser Inc. in New York City. And that is a company that we know very well for being, distributors of occult things. So here is our first page. This is how I know it is 1922. In addition, here we have that it was first published in 1910 and reprinted in 1922. So this is the exact same thing. It's the exact same book as the 1910. It just was reprinted. So we have a little preface. And then we have our table of contents. And then it's broken down into three parts. We have the veil and its symbols, which is so cool to me. It's got introductory and general, and then class 1 is the trumps, the major arcana, and then class 2 is the minor arcana, and then the last little bit is about tarot and history. Then part 2, you move into the doctrine behind the veil, and then it breaks it down into the tarot and secret tradition, the trumps major and their inner symbolism, and conclusion as to the greater keys. And then part 3 is the outer method of the oracles, and it breaks it down into the distinction between the greater and lesser arcana, or the major and minors, and then the lesser arcana, which, I mean, that's what they call it the entire time, but it's the minors. And then there is a bibliography with where all of this information has come from. So then we go straight into part 1, which is rather long. Let's see. So this is part 1, and then we go into part 2. And part 2 is where it gives you the doctrine behind the veil. All of that is relatively big. And then, let's see. And then we go straight into this. Now, there are 2 or 3 pages like this that whoever owned this in 1922 wrote around, but it doesn't last very long. I believe they stop after the Empress. And honestly, it doesn't even bother me that much because it didn't intrude on the picture at all. So I'm not bothered by it. Also, it's still an amazing piece of history. So it goes through all of the majors, and if I am correct, they put the Fool right before the World, and I think that this is a Golden Dawn tradition. I know I talked about this before, I believe, when I was doing my Albano Little White Book video, and not knowing exactly why they did that, but I believe it's a Golden Dawn tradition, putting the Fool like that. And again, I could be wrong, but whatever. So then it goes into the minors, and it breaks it down by suit. So we go through the minors, and then we get to this page, which is some additional meanings, which is basically, when you get to this section, this is the small little keywords that are included in the Key to the Tarot and most Little White books. And this, I believe, is where um, the Merrimack deck, I don't have it readily available. It is basically a copy of the University Books deck, but it has keywords printed on it. And this, I believe, is where some of them, I mean, they are sometimes offensive, the keywords. Like in this instance, it says 8 is a young man in business who has relations with a querent, a dark girl. That is not appropriate, in my opinion. But, I mean, this is 1922. And obviously, that is where Merrimack got some of their keywords, because that is exactly like some of the keywords that they have. That is what it is. And I just talked about this also and not knowing where this came from. And it's the recurrence of cards when you're dealing. And it was in the back of Frankie Albano's book. And I was saying I had never seen it. And here it is, right here in the pictorial key. And it tells you all about, it gives you the reverse and the upright. So that's really cool. That's nice to know that he didn't just pull it out of thin air. This was in the original text from A.E. Waite. And then here are different methods for using the cards, some different spreads. And then here we have our bibliography and where, all of it came from. And then the very last page is this, which is a cool little quote, which I don't think came from... Oh, it's not a quote. Well, anyway, the end of this. But I do think that this is kind of cool anyway. So that's it. This is the first edition, second printing of the Pictorial Key to the Tarot. And thank y'all for stopping by and letting me share this and indulging me in my ranting about it. Hope y'all are doing well.